तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Atha, can you repeat after me?
Atha
Yoganushasanam
Yoganushasanam
Atha Yoganushasanam
Atha Yoganushasanam.
Two more times.
Atha Yoganushasanam Atha Yoganushasanam.
Yogaha
Yogaha
Chitta Vritti Nirodhaha
Vritti Nirodhaha
Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodhaha
Vritti Nirodhaha
Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodhaha
Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodhaha Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodhaha Yogaschitta Vritti Nirodhaha.
Tada drashtuhu Swarupe Avasthanam Tada drashtuhu Swarupe Vasthanam Tada drashtu Swarupe Vasthanam
Tada drashtu Swarupe Vasthanam Tada drashtu Swarupe Vasthanam
Vritti Sarupyam Itaratra 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 Vrittayaha Panchatayyaha Klishta Aklishtaha Vrittayah Panchatayyaha Klishta Klishtaha Vrittayah Panchatayah Klishta Klishtaha Vrittayah Panchatayah Klishta Klishtaha Vrittayah Panchatayah Klishta Klishtaha Vrittayah Panchatayah Klishta Klishtaha.
let's go back quickly so that we can move to the second sutra. Just coming back here, see how many things you will see. What you are telling me is what Patanjali will say. So what we will see is how it all fits in. So you yourself have figured out that the end is the freedom. The means for this end is actually removing the ignorance and not seeing oneself as small but as the whole. Preparation is developing initial trust, and trust in oneself, trust in the universe, and also the trust in the scripture's ability to tell you something that you cannot know. That is what we call, that could be the preparation. We will see how Patanjali describes preparation. He talks about many things. I think Holger said the entire, all this yama, niyama, the pranayama, asana, these are also all preparation. And as Matthias said that savikalpaka samadhi also can be put in preparation, and nirvikalpaka samadhi is the end. Yeah. So we saw that. So preparation itself has so many different aspects. You saw that? Yeah? Now, the final thing that you need to understand is, suppose you understand that the freedom is what I'm searching. Suppose you discover that Atma is the whole. Through preparing yourself, how will you engage in this world? Application. Something that Anya said, what you also, you have to live differently. That is what you understand, it has to translate in what? Actions. So that means, what could be the application? Suppose you become a yogi and this becomes the goal of your life, how will you live differently?
Taking the results not just like random, knowing that there is an unfallibility. I can do what I can do, and I have the trust in this.
Okay, so one thing is that while you act, that because of this implicit trust that you have in yourself and the universe and the order of the universe, then your actions become little bit more orderly and not just do what makes you feel good, right? There is a sense of responsibility, there is an understanding of dharma, there is a lot of things which will change, right, in how you choose your actions. Wonderful. Anything else?
To do things which make me more free.
Excellent. Superb. So that means, right. So many actions that you choose may have got no relevance. They may not be connected to your freedom. So now what the way you see your life is, your actions and everything is aligned towards a given goal. This particular thing that Narayana is talking about is something which is beautifully explained in Kathopanishad. It's a very beautiful, very powerful imagery which is used, and it is saying that there is a chariot which is equivalent to a body, and the chariot has 5 horses, and they are what? Senses. And then they have reins, and that is what? The mind. And then there is a person who drives the chariot, which is what? Buddhi. Right? Now suppose the Buddhi doesn't know what is the end, what is the means to an end, how to prepare oneself. The Buddhi is totally unequipped to use the chariot to reach the destination, because you don't know what the destination is, right? So what will happen is what will run the show? The horses will run the show. So in this case, if you use the body, what will run the show? The senses. Senses means anything that you find attractive, go for it, right? You don't have any goal here. What you are searching, what is a preparation, what is a means, you keep going from one place to the other. So therefore, all your actions are all unrelated. They are all driven by what Narayana is saying is what? All the stimuli that the senses provide, and therefore they may have no connection to this freedom that you are searching. Suppose you come to know that, hey, that is not the way to fulfillment, it is this, then what will you try to do is align those actions, choose those actions which will ultimately what? Help you in this final goal of freedom. So that means the actions themselves, you will try to choose those actions which are what? Conducive to you owning up your freedom. So that means your whole life changes. We are not talking about giving up actions, right? Because anybody can ask, oh, if ignorance is the problem, let me just work on the ignorance by removing the ignorance, by gaining the knowledge. Why should I act in this world? Many people have this problem. Why should I do anything? I just am primarily interested in removing the ignorance. Now, what Patanjali says, which is not what generally people understand, is that application is critical. You need to change the way you live. Yes, you don't act like before, but your actions have to support this goal. You can't pretend that you have achieved this goal before actually achieving it. You can't pretend you're free without actually knowing the true nature of Atma. Just because Veda or Yoga tells you you're free doesn't mean that the ignorance of this reality of that you are free has gone. Right? So you have to work for it and you have to know it, and the whole life becomes a means to gain that freedom. And now Patanjali is going to, the sutras that follow, they are going to talk about all these 4 topics. See, what is important for you to recognize? See, just think, right? Suppose, right? The only thing that you have to learn is be in the present. Suppose. Do you need 194 sutras? You're too intelligent, right? So that means I don't need 194 sutras to make you see, hey, live in the present. Suppose I have to teach you, oh, now stop thinking, right? And be in your own nature. Do I need 194 sutras for it? So that means when these 194 sutras are given, they have a very big vision. And so many different elements are connected to make you see this reality for yourself. So you have to follow the thinking of Patanjali and see how he makes you think about all of this and how he connects it all to this end. Yes? Okay. So now he sets the ground for what he is going to do through these 196 Yoga Sutras. He is going to talk about these 4 topics. Now, let's go to the next sutra. Let's now see, let's get into Patanjali's mind and see how he shows you these 4, right? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Okay. Next sutra. The next sutra is Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha. He has to Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Okay. Now, one thing is very, okay, now you want all these 4 things to accomplish, you have to start somewhere, right? Where will you start? You need to, get the end. You figured out that you want to remove the ignorance. You figure out you have to prepare the mind. You also say that, okay, the way I act in this world has to change, but you have to start somewhere. So where will you start? What is a good point? What is a good starting point for all these things? So he starts by saying, this is a good starting point. What is it? Now, here we will see the traditional meaning and then we will see Vedanta meaning. If you just look at the literal translation of this, it will be, I'll tell you, yoga is what? Chitta is mind, vritti is thoughts, and Nirodha is stopping. Right? So if you literally read this, what it will seem like to you is what? Yoga, you start by what? Stopping the thoughts of the mind. Now, you have to come back here. See, this is how you reconcile. Otherwise, you don't know how to reconcile. Now, if I ask you, if you just stop thinking of the mind, will you ensure your freedom? No. Why not?
You don't remove the ignorance.
Superb. Did you understand what she said? Loudly,
You
Sita
don't
Devi.
remove the ignorance.
Superb. Why do we say that by just stopping to think, we don't remove the ignorance? Why? It's the truth that is absolutely right, but you need to substantiate, otherwise Tobias will say, what is the evidence that you have for that? He's a philosopher. So, for everything you need to substantiate. Making the right statement is not enough, you need to back it up with proper reasoning.
You stay in your thoughts.
Superb. So that means at present you understand something in a way. At present, suppose I think I'm small and I start thinking, I don't have any active thoughts, but by the thinking that I'm small, without thinking, this thing which is ignorance that I am the whole, will it go away by stopping to think? You have to answer, you have to see the answer is no. Because, why? Because all of us are given the experience of no thoughts every day. When is this experience? Deep sleep. So that means if just stopping thought was what was going to remove the ignorance and give you the freedom, all of us will be long free. Why? Because each night for 8 hours, so last night the Utah said, oh, the sleep, only 6 hours, it was not enough. So therefore, what we have this, what out of these 8 hours of sleeping, the deep sleep could be how long? 4 or 5 hours or whatever, right? It's deep sleep. So how do we define deep sleep? A deep sleep is the time that you have no thoughts. So if no thoughts were capable of removing ignorance, we will all be enlightened by now.
Maybe we'll be enlightened during this period of deep sleep.
No, but what happens is when you wake up, then what happens is, suppose you were enlightened during this deep sleep, when you wake up you'll be all enlightened, right? What happens is you still feel miserable, right? Suppose you are feeling sad about something, in the deep sleep there is a respite, for sure, right? This is why even the doctors know it. Suppose you have a lot of pain, they'll give you painkiller. What will the painkiller do? Put you to sleep. When you go to sleep, the conditions of the body, conditions of the mind, the pain, all of that goes away. But does it mean that everything is cured? No. So that means the afflictions of the mind come back when you wake up, right? Everything. Why? Because as Sita Devi critically, she got the point. She says that no thought is not capable of removing ignorance. That's a crux. If no thought was capable of removing ignorance, then you will know physics, chemistry, biology, every knowledge by having no thoughts. But it is not true.
But this is the Vedantic view. If you go from the yogic view, this is the definition. The end of.
So that's why I'm saying that what we are trying to do is that what we will see is this cannot be the meaning because I'm giving you logic, right? If you want to still believe, you have all the all the free will, right? To believe in whatever. That's why I'm not saying we are saying is right, this is saying is right. I'm not saying Vedanta is saying this. Do you see this? I'm making you see. We are examining ideas. We are not, I'm not like, I belong to Vedanta school and you belong to yoga school. This is not my approach. I'm asking you to see whether the absence of thought can, right, remove ignorance. Give me one instance.
But this is not the case here.
When you have no thoughts, then it's possible that insight comes up in wisdom. Yeah, we gain wisdom from insight.
Where can you see that when you have absolutely no thoughts, then wisdom comes up? Where does it come from?
It appears.
All these are, see, these are all our imagine. See, if you have understood something, you have to be able to subtract. If you have arguments, give good arguments, right? So give good, thoughtful arguments against what is being said. We are not taking sides, we are just seeing the realities. See, the whole approach has to be inquiring approach. Otherwise, we can't proceed, right? So that means what you need to say. Suppose you subscribe that absence of thoughts lead to absence, to removal of ignorance. You have to show me one example of that.
But Shankara said between two thoughts there is the self shining through, and if you have no thought, then the self shines through all the time.
Okay, now this is interesting. Okay, so now forget about now look at this. Forget about deep sleep. What Holger is coming up with is a new idea, and he says that between two thoughts there is what silence. In that silence, the self is shining. If that was the case, and we were aware of that self-shining, the thing, all of us will be enlightened. Because all of us right now, between the two thoughts, have some gap. There is nobody who doesn't have the gap between the two thoughts. And if the self was just shining, all of us will recognize this shining thought. What is the truth is, the self is shining, but we are ignorant. And therefore, the self can shine it till cow goes home, and you still will not know it. So that is what we are trying to do through yoga, to make you see certain realities which are already there. So therefore, use your logic, use your exploring capacity, because if you don't use your exploring capacity, you stay with your fantasies. So therefore, this is what it says. This is not what it can mean literally. But Patanjali is saying this, so it has to mean something slightly different. Right? It can't mean literally just stopping of the thoughts. It has to mean what? It can't also not mean anything. Right? If you are studying Yoga Sutra, you're not studying Yoga Sutra to negate what Patanjali is saying. You're trying to make sense of what Patanjali is saying. Yeah? Okay. So now, what it then means is you have to look for another meaning, because the literal meaning doesn't really seem to fit. So what Patanjali said is, there are many thoughts in the mind. There are two types of thoughts. One thoughts are what we call superfluous thoughts, and the other are what we call the thoughts which have depth, which have analysis, which actually help you towards removal of ignorance. So the mind has two types of thoughts. One is helping you to remove this ignorance. The other thoughts are the ones which will keep you in ignorance. So when he is asking about chitta vritti nirodha, He's not just asking you categorically to stop all kinds of thoughts. He's asking you to do what? Distinguish between the thoughts which are helpful in removing ignorance and cultivate those thoughts, and what? Remove those thoughts which keep you in ignorance. Now, how do we understand this? See, if he wanted no thoughts, he would not write Yoga Sutras. The Yoga Sutras means you have to make sense of them. In order to make sense of them, what do you need? You need thinking. So therefore, you need to first understand what Patanjali is talking about before creating your own images about what Patanjali is talking about. So therefore, what he's very right in saying, hey, distinguish between these two thoughts. How will you, now, the next question is, how do I distinguish between the thoughts which don't help me to remove ignorance and thoughts which help me to remove ignorance? How will I say? How will I know which thought is what? So therefore, there is this, it's very interesting. We will use what we call little bit understanding of neurosciences to really see that this really makes sense. Because in one day, first, if I ask you, how many thoughts on an average a person has? How many thoughts?
40,000.
40,000? 48,000? Somebody said 60,000. So now, these 60,000 thoughts, can you just, first of all, which, these 60,000 thoughts you just want to stop now? So therefore, what you do need to do is, out of these 60,000 thoughts, which are useful thoughts? Suppose I tell you, out of these 60,000 thoughts, how many are helping you and how many are actually keeping you in a, this half papad which keeps making you think about, oh, this person was so mean to me and that person did this to me, he humiliated me. Are these useful thoughts? They will help you to remove your ignorance? No. So that means you have to be intelligent and you need to detect. You can't just say all thoughts are bad. What you need to do is you need to be intelligent and say, out of these 60,000 thoughts, which are helping me and which are not helping me, which are helping me to remove ignorance and which are the ones which are keeping me in what? Ignorance. So there is one way of we see that. And in order to understand that, we need to understand little bit human mind, what we mean by which are the helpful thoughts and which are not the helpful thoughts. Let's understand human mind a little bit. As you live in this world, the senses are given to you to what? See the external world. When the senses pick up the data from the external world, it reaches your mind, okay? And the mind is going to process the data. The mind is given to process the data. Yes? Now, the mind itself has two centers. One is what we call amygdala, and the other one is prefrontal cortex. What is the function? The senses report the object. What is the first thing that will happen? Where did this data will get first processed? Amygdala. In the amygdala. In this, and this is, by the way, not only human beings, animals, all of us, we have these centers of the brain, amygdala, right? This is what we call, and that amygdala is basically working on what we call instinctive nature. So instinctive nature is what? Survival. What are the instinctive natures? pleasures. So these are what we call amygdala centers. Immediately you see something and your mind gives you, oh, is it likable or not? Is it something which frightens you or not? So these are the center, this is the center which provides you with the initial data. Now, what is special about human being is that in addition to this amygdala, human being also has highly developed prefrontal cortex. What is this prefrontal cortex? It is the capacity for you to analyze, to inquire, to look into something in depth. So that is what we call the second center of the brain, which is what we call prefrontal cortex. Which is what makes, why do we think that human being is so developed? In the Vedas, they say having a human birth is a great privilege. Is it a great privilege because we are all very happy and we are all living very happily? It's a privilege because we have this prefrontal cortex. It has amazing capacities. It can figure out how old is the universe, what is the black hole, what is the quantum physics, that all these world that you see is ultimately nothing but atoms and particles. It can know how many galaxies are there in this universe. Incredible. Genetics, it can know DNA, it can know incredible things. And this is why we say getting this human birth is a great privilege, because this, not many species in this world they have. Now, generally, we use this prefrontal cortex, which is the advanced brain, to know things about the world. Right? Biology, chemistry, physics, mathematics, all of these, this is the brain that we use, which is a highly advanced brain to know things of the world. So therefore, suppose you use it very advanced, but with reference to what is my nature, what is the cause of the universe, what is the nature of the universe, and how am I related to it, and how am I related to the cause. Generally, we don't use this prefrontal cortex capacity to inquire into these questions. And because we don't use this prefrontal cortex capacity to answer these questions, what can happen is, on one hand, you can be a highly intelligent scientist, but when it comes to your emotions and when it comes to your self-image, where are you operating from? Where are you operating from? Amygdala, instinctive brain, which will give you, things will happen, you'll be really angry, things will happen, you can become very sad. So that means you, on one hand, you have an extremely developed thinking capacity, but it is not used for this area of inquiry. You have a question, Tovia?
No, it's more like it's also the explanation for many psychological problems. If you see that the amount of information is growing and the world is getting more complicated, let's say day by day, and you don't have a tool and you're not using your capacity to differentiate, then you're getting sick. And the more intelligent you are, the bigger the problem is. I would call it mindfuck, the mindfuck problem. You use your brain capacity against yourself.
Okay, great. So now, suppose because you have all this advancement and full of information, suppose you say, oh, the mind is on one hand knowing many things, but at the same time is suppose more depressed. So let's stop the mind. Is that the solution? No. You have to see this. What is the solution? Use the very capacity to what? Inquire. Yes. inquire and get this right. And if you get this right, then what happens is everything is what in its place. Then you begin to live with certain clarity. And that clarity has everything to do with what? Your freedom. So therefore, using your what? Distinguishing the thoughts of the mind from superfluous. What are these superfluous thoughts? The first what impressions that your amygdala gives you. This person did not smile at me, she must be angry with me. She doesn't like me. She doesn't love me. These are all the conclusions that we have, which are what Patanjali calls us is, they are superfluous conclusions. They keep us in ignorance. We keep on building our own stories, and within stories, within stories, within stories, which keeps us away from the truth. We lose track of the truth. So therefore, what is important is to move away from this, obviously, right? And use the very thinking capacity which is the greatest blessing, which distinguishes human being from everybody else, is begin to use this to inquire about big things in life. What are the big things in life? What is the end that I am seeking? What is the means to this end? How do I prepare myself? How do I choose actions which will help me that? That is when you are using your thinking capacity as a blessing to solve the problem of ignorance. So, the solution is not to stop every kind of thinking. The solution is to stop thinking which doesn't serve you. Do you see that? See, if you, so that means what you are now doing is using this prefrontal capacity to inquire into all of this. That is the second sutra. The thoughts which are going to help you to get to what? Your freedom. What you want to do is get to your freedom. And getting to your freedom means your understanding of I has to what? Cease from seeing yourself as small to seeing yourself as whole. So the whole thinking capacity is now committed to seeing yourself in a different light altogether. So now you're using this to understand the nature of I. Third sutra. Do you understand? Third sutra.
I have to be a very discerning individual to know the difference between what is helpful and
Shantala,
not.
can you explain a little bit? Please, I need a break. Okay, tell me. What do you mean?
No, I just meant you said very easily that it's, you just stop the thoughts that are not useful and then you develop the ones that are useful, but
Wonderful.
that's a lifetime work of discerning.
Exactly.
But you're going to the third sutra already, so I was like, hold
Yeah,
on.
because this is why you have 196 sutra.
Yes.
If the first sutra itself showed you everything, you didn't need a second sutra. So what Patanjali does is he develops the subject matter. So he first makes you see what are
It's a goal.
Exactly, these are codes. And you need to follow Patanjali to see, okay, he's moving from here to here. Then he's saying this, and everything has to reconcile and make sense.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're just in your own image of what
Yes.
he's saying. You're not following what he's saying.
It's very systematic.
It's very systematic. So that means he's not all this saying it just to give you a waste of time. If all just sit and have no thoughts. If that was the case, he will have one sentence. He was too brilliant.
But it's simply the essence of the sutras from the beginning. It's the law.
Sorry?
This first sutra, or the second sutra,
Yes.
is the essence of his teaching.
Okay.
And now follows the analysis.
Yeah. So he is now.
So it's not like you say this cliche, simply sitting and thinking, but there's truth in it, because samadhi is the absence of thought, is the transcendence of the mind. So this first sentence, in the psychological sense, is very important. I understand that you want to give the teaching of Vedanta, and there is ignorance, and you have to get rid of ignorance in analysis and leave it. It's right, yeah. But in psychological sense, and concerning the mind, this first sentence is the essence of the whole teaching of Patanjali.
Okay, I mean, if you think that the absence of thought is what Patanjali is talking about, you are absolutely free to think like that, right? But as I'm saying, that what I'm trying to show is I mean, one is free to subscribe to any opinion. I'm not here to tell you that I have the truth. We are trying to inquire a little bit. Just listen to it. Whether you want to subscribe to it or not is entirely your prerogative. I'm nobody to tell you this is how you have to think, right? We are just inquiring. So what we are inquiring is, so I'm not telling you because Vedanta says that the thought cannot remove ignorance, therefore Vedanta is right and you have to look at this sutra like this. Look at my approach. I'm saying that show me one instance where absence of thought removes ignorance. It's a very different. I'm not creating two schools, as I keep telling you, that Vedanta is not seeing people as what fighting. I'm not fighting against anybody.
I think you made it clear that there's no contradiction at all.
Exactly.
And I don't know if I understand it correctly, but here it's written that yoga means the mastery of the soul,
Yeah.
of the mind. So
Okay.
it's important
So-
to understand the word mastery.
Exactly.
What does it mean?
So, okay, great. So what does it
Could
mean,
you help
master? So
understand?
in fact, nirodha literally means stopping.
Yeah.
But what we are saying is, it's not stopping, it is actually mastering,
Yeah.
right?
There's a difference.
So there is a difference. So what does mastery mean? To be able to distinguish between the thoughts which are not useful and the thoughts which are useful.
Like managing.
Managing, exactly. You're managing your mind so that it can remove this problem of ignorance. That's all. It's able to see the nature of Atma, right, as full. So this is how. So that means you have to, the mind has to be prepared to remove this ignorance. And the thoughts which will help you to, that these are called what? Conducive thoughts. The thoughts which make you in that ignorance, they are called inconducive thoughts. So mastery of the mind is what? Making it more available so that it can understand the realities. Right? So this is why the only thing that I have changed in the meaning of this nirodha word. Nirodha literally means stopping, and what we have done is we have changed it slightly to mastery.
You can see it in, like, if you have some experience with yoga, for example. So I have the experience, I went to a yoga master. He was brilliant in hatha yoga, and but he had no idea about the Patanjali Sutras at all. So people were falling down because of energy experience, but no background was there. And I asked him, why is he doing this stuff? He said, yeah, because he likes to do it, because he enjoys it. But he was not clear about what he's doing in the end. And on the other hand, there are people who are not doing yoga at all. I mean, or different kinds of yoga. I mean, you can also have ganja yoga or whatever, sleeping yoga, or yoga means just wait. You know? So you can also, if you just have, for example, the yoga of non-action, let's say, when you call it Vedanta, it's just a way of thinking. It's a way to see the world and to remove ignorance in the end.
Yeah.
So this is it. It's not a contradiction. It's just clarify what you're doing, understand what you're doing. So
Yeah.
this is the meaning behind.
Yeah.
This is what I understand by mastery.
Yeah.
So
Mastery means you have to, the mastery is you use your mind primarily to remove the ignorance. That's it. That is what we call mastery. Yeah?
The Nirodha meaning is, I know in Sanskrit many words have different meanings.
Yes.
Is it true that it's also, one meaning is stopping, the other is managing, or is this true? That,
Yeah, see, the language is such that you're right, it gives way to many different meanings. So you're right, the dictionary meaning of Nirodha may not have only just one meaning, as Yuta says, which is stopping, but it can also have other meaning, which is managing. Actually, we should see the dictionary meaning of Sanskrit. Does anybody have Sanskrit dictionary online? You can look up the word Nirodha and you can see.
It would be nice to have this,
Yeah.
because we are looking on the words of Patanjali and
Yes.
don't
See.
know Sanskrit, so
Yeah. Also, one thing, Yuta, you have to understand, whether you are studying yoga or you are studying Vedanta, what you need to understand is one thing. Yes, the words are very important, but the words themselves are limited. There is, show me one word which can convey the truth. It's impossible. So that means, because in our language, we have created words for what we know. And what we know through our senses is always what? Limited. So that means all the words that are there in our language, they are all limited words. Now, I can't use unknown words to make you see the reality. I have to use your known words. I have to use those known words, and I have to take out what? The limitation from those words. That is what we call using those words with a proper method to convey what needs to be conveyed. That in Sanskrit we call it the pramana. Pramana, and there is a whole methodology of how you use words to convey certain things which are not limited. But you have to use limited words to convey something which is much more than something limited that we see. Yeah? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I see that Vedanta is put the intellect on the highest place, but what is, if this would mean stop the mind, go beyond the mind, go in intuition, go in, beyond the, what is wrong in this?
Okay.
In the thinking?
Okay. See, what happens is, intuition, is it thinking, or see, we create what we see. Now suppose you really want to stick to this word, right? Nirodha. You will not even talk about intuition, because intuition is a result of thinking or not. Hey, without thinking you can't have intuition. Please understand that, right? So therefore, see, this is a human mind. It begins to see things which are actually your own, our own imagination. And by doing that, what happens is we don't see what is being said, unfortunately. Because intuition, suppose, right? Let's analyze a little bit intuition. Now I have a lot of resistance here, so I have a little bit. It's much easier to teach Vedanta because you teach the text and everybody's here to learn Vedanta. Here, I'm trying to teach you, and you have a very different idea of what yoga is, and I'm trying to tell you, hey, this yoga is and Vedanta are saying the same thing, but you don't actually want to. I think this is just your story. But it's okay, I have no problem with that. It's fun for me. Anyway, I'm not here to convert you into being a Vedantin. I'm only sharing and exploring. That's the only spirit. I'm not a missionary. Please understand. To bring you to the Vedanta fold. Enjoy the inquiry. Just relax and enjoy the inquiry. I'm not fighting with you. Just see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Give up all these, ninja attitude. And you have your whole life to think about what makes sense to you. Just while you're here 2 days, enjoy. Just say what somebody else has to say, enjoy. Make it fun. At least I'm trying to show you the logic. I'm not telling you, I'm not dogmatic. I'm not telling you, Vedanta is saying this, so you must believe it. We are inquiring. I'm in an inquiring mode. Open your mind. Just enjoy listening. And any inquiry should create pleasure. When your notions are getting questioned, actually it's lovely. It's good. You should not feel threatened. Wonderful. Yeah. So now, intuition. Let's think about intuition. What is the source of intuition? Tell me. Intuition means what? You see somebody. What do you call intuition? Let me ask you. Why should I answer? It's your bonus. If you have a counter opinion, you have to explain, right? It's not my job to explain. Okay.
To me, intuition looks like it doesn't come from, it's like beyond the mind. So I see something and I know something. Or yeah.
So how is the process? Can you know something? Please understand. So your mind is giving you some message, right, of what it is. That is called thought or not thought?
Yeah, it's a thought. Primary experience.
That is called thought.
The thought is the language of the is the language of the intuition. But the intuition as itself, it looks, Okay.
It's fun. Let's have fun. Okay.
I just have one comment because if we're looking at the end, and the end is freedom. It's constant freedom. It's freedom all the time, whether there is a thought or whether there's not a thought. And this is what scripture tells us, that we are free. And if Patanjali would be saying that only if you stop the thought, then you're free, it can only be a momentarily freedom, just for a certain amount of time. And this is not what scripture tells us.
Super. Excellent. So that means that if your nature is freedom, then you're free. It should, as she very rightly says, it doesn't depend upon presence or absence of anything. Here, when she talked about, interesting, superb. Let's come back. What she's saying is, look at her. The freedom she initially defined, which is the end, which what Vedanta may call moksha and yoga may call samadhi, right? And how did she define it? That freedom is not dependent on any other thing. If you want to stop the mind, then that freedom is dependent upon what? As she very rightly said, what? Stopping of the mind. Is it still dependent or independent? Still dependent. So is that real freedom? You have to, make it all with this mind which is thinking with the 60,000 thoughts you have to. Now, suppose whole life you don't have to think anything, and then you think, oh, you are enlightened, right? So that means your whole life will go in what? Stopping the thoughts from 60 to what? 40,000. From 40,000 to 30,000. 30,000 to 20,000. 20,000 to 10,000. And when will you accomplish zero thought?
I just looked up Nirodha.
Sorry?
I just looked up the word Nirodha.
Nirodha.
And it doesn't mean to stop.
Very good.
To restrain or hold back.
Superb.
Holding back the horses.
So that actually supports me. Thank you very much.
I would say it also supports Patanjali, because I think there's also, this sutra could be read in two ways depending on whether you read yoga as the practice or as the goal.
Okay.
So I do think, I agree that restraining the mind is
So-
the central and first practice, but may not necessarily be the end.
Okay, so restraining the mind, does it make sense when I say that the mind has different types of thoughts? Restraining the mind means certain things which are superfluous, which are against what you want to gain, stopping them, and cultivating thoughts which are useful for you to know your true nature. It fits perfectly.
I think that that's what
Wonderful. Super.
Can I give another argument?
Yes.
More science-based.
Yes.
Imagine some of you still subscribe to this stopping of the mind. Okay?
A little bit louder.
Yeah, imagine some of you still subscribe to this idea of stopping the thoughts is equal to freedom. Okay? Now I will tell you, is it possible? Scientifically, is it possible to switch from 45,000 or 60,000 and gradually go to extinction of all thoughts? Is it possible? See, any guy, any psychologist or any better neuroscientist will tell you, okay, bring me this guy you are claiming he has stopped his thoughts, put him in a brain imaging, let's say, kind of device, okay, a scan, and you will see the neural activity, which is like firing all the time. And he is claiming that. Now, this is one way of looking at it. Second way, when you are in the morning getting up and you are saying, oh, it will be nice to have a coffee. So it means this kind of thought, a person who has stopped his thought will not have. What kind of clothes will I wear? Hey, this is Narayan. Is it not a thought? So imagine, I mean, how will you live without thoughts? I mean, it's as simple as that, right? So, just another way to look at it, right?
Well, this is a categorical failure because Patanjali was not a neuroscientist. He was maybe a phenomenologist or not a neuroscientist. You can say this neuroscientist, yes.
As I said,
Patanjali is not a neuroscientist.
okay. See, if you feel that okay, this is about stopping, then wonderful. Go ahead. I don't have any problem with that, right? Now I'm only showing you an alternative way of looking at it. You decide for yourself what makes sense to you, what doesn't make sense to you. But when I'm giving you an alternative way of thinking, I'm giving you an intelligent alternative way of thinking. So you can't just dismiss what I'm saying because I'm using a lot of reasoning and I'm making you think through things that you have not thought of. So then listen with an open mind, and after or during or after the 2 days, you can choose what, see, that's this wonderful faculty of choice that we have. Nobody can force us to do anything. We can only expose ourselves and decide for ourselves what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. As a job of a teacher, my job is only to provide you with this alternative. What you do with it is really your problem. It's not my problem, really. So therefore, but while I'm explaining, because if you keep coming back and you only stick to you, I can't progress. I'm showing you certain logic. If you don't want to go into my logic and if you still think what you are thinking is right and you don't really have any logic to support what you are thinking, that's your prerogative. It's not my problem, right? So it's fine. I have no agenda here. I just am here to explore certain things, right? So what I'm saying is something which also matches with dictionary meaning is restraining. This is very good definition of restraining, distinguishing between certain thoughts which help you and thoughts which don't help you, trying to eliminate those thoughts and trying to cultivate them. Do you find any problem with that?
We do it all the time.
Sorry?
We do it all the time.
We do it all the time, right?
Or in our words, do therapy with your undiscovered emotional stuff.
Exactly. So when we go for a therapy, what Yuta is saying, we do exactly the same. What do we do? That our mind is thinking about some millions of different thoughts, and the therapist, what does it do? It helps you to what? think about the things in a way which helps you and tries to eliminate thoughts which are actually not helpful, which are self-destructive. This is a very rational way of living. See, human mind, which is such an advanced capacity that you are born with, the ultimate purpose is not to stop it. The ultimate purpose is to use it to know your true nature.
So it went wrong why the word is not right translated.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly.
The whole philosophy after this, what is now here, yoga is based on this, what Matthias is pointing out. No? It's
Yes.
based on this sentence.
Exactly. So this has become like a law, and everything has to, whereas here we are seeing it mastering, and mastering includes, I mean, it actually essentially involves restraining.
I think
Right?
it usually is translated as restraint.
As restraining.
Not stop.
Okay, superb. So actually the real meaning is only restraining. What she's saying, the stopping meaning doesn't even exist in dictionary.
Actually, this is also the basis of all who teaches meditation. No? This is also in many meditation groups they use this as a basic. What is the goal? No?
To have no thought.
No? It's not only the Hatha Yoga part; it's also in the meditation.
Well, no, I don't know, because see, if you look at, see, that's a cliche of meditation, no thoughts. But if you actually go into Buddhist meditations, they have compassion meditations, they have all kinds of meditations, forgiving meditation, they have meditations to cultivate love. These are not thoughtless meditations. Please understand that.
They are
He
thoughtless
starts with
meditation.
concentration, and he says a whole list of things you can meditate on.
Superb.
And then says, if there's none of it works for you, meditate on anything you like.
Superb. Exactly. That's what I actually am trying to show. So that's okay. Yeah.
I learned the thoughtless meditation to have no thoughts. I learned the state, and I know the state of mind when you have no thoughts, and it's possible. Yeah, it doesn't last long with me, but
Doesn't last long. So you have to get up, and you, as you said, you have to even to brush teeth, to eat. These are all thoughts, right? I mean, you
Even
can't.
if you think I have no thoughts.
Don't.
you
It's a
think.
thought. Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So that's good. It's possible. Obviously, I mean, we are not saying thoughtless. We are not saying that keeping quiet is bad. Please, am I saying that? See, please try to understand what I'm saying. Am I saying that, the keeping quiet is bad, that it is not good, it is not helpful? Am I saying that?
It's an open invitation to inquire yourself.
Exactly. It's don't convert my words into something else. Don't read meanings that I don't convey. I'm not saying that it is not useful, it's bad or anything. Is this the primary goal of your life, to stop thinking? That is what is in question.
Can one say that this one mind is the unconscious and the other mind, like with the depth and analysis, is the conscious? Like one in psychology says there's this unconscious and this conscious. Is it possible to see it that way?
Yeah, sure, you can. Right? So this is very good. What Sahajo is doing is adding one more dimension to this thing that I said. The mind has about many different kinds of thoughts. Some of them don't help you and some of them help you. Right? And well, I did it. I created two definitions. One is the superfluous thoughts of the mind, which is coming from the instinctive brain, which is amygdala. And what I said is, this in-depth analysis comes from, using this prefrontal cortex and making sense of things and making sure that your thoughts are in keeping with reality and you're not creating realities, unnecessary realities. What Sahajo is doing is, she's adding one more dimension to this distinction that I made. And what she's saying is, this prefrontal cortex, which is your reasoning capacity, itself is constrained by what we call unconscious. What is unconscious? unconscious is when you are young, you go through certain experiences and you have given meaning to those experiences. What are the meanings that you gave to those experiences? Suppose you had not good relationship with your father. Why did you not have good relationship with your father? Because you felt that your father did not love you. Suppose. Now, as a child, you are not so aware of what I'm thinking, that my father doesn't love me, and you're not even able to articulate to your father, this is what you feel. So these are all the feelings which just remain in your unconscious. And as you grow up, you have never either admitted to yourself or to anybody else that I hate my father, because that doesn't seem at all like something that you can not easily talk about or even accept to yourself. So therefore, this feeling of and that itself is many mixed feeling. On one hand, I feel I hate my father. On the other hand, I can feel my father doesn't love me. Do you see? These are all kind of related feelings, and they are all unaddressed. When they are all unaddressed, then what happens is, when you are trying to think about things using your prefrontal cortex, making reason, they interfere. So that means when they interfere, they twist the way you see the world, and they twist the way you see people and their intentions. So now, these thoughts, as Sahajo says, are also which category? Are they helpful or unhelpful? Unhelpful. So that means, if you want to restrain your thoughts, not only you have to learn to not operate only from amygdala, you also need to learn to recognize what is in your unconscious and undo those stories. That's when you begin to use your thinking faculty constructively. So that's a very, very good point, Sahajo. When we are talking about so-called restraining, it involves two processes and not just one. It includes, this instinctive brain is kind of, analyze a little bit and see whether my stories are accurate or not. The second thing is looking at the unconscious, which is governing our opinions about things all the time, without our being conscious about it. So that means, what is interesting is, how does unconscious work? So suppose the person who feels that I'm not loved as a child, now the child, and that was only with reference to the father, now as the child grows up and begins to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, they will, this feeling of not being loved, which actually belongs to my relationship with my father, gets transferred to my spouse, in the sense that I feel, oh, he or she doesn't love me. Because whatever that person does, by the time my mind receives it, it gets twisted. And that doesn't serve me, because constantly I live with my own interpretations which give me suffering. If you have a mind like this, when will you enjoy the freedom? Tell me. When will you enjoy the freedom? You need to straighten up your thought processes. That straightening up of the thought processes requires a huge discrimination between what serves me, what doesn't serve me. And what doesn't serve me, I have to use my will to eliminate. Eliminate means I need to first recognize that it is there, and I have to do things to undo it. I have to retell a story to myself which is accurate and not what I'm used to. This is a job. It's not a small thing. Right? So this is a big thing. Thank you, Sahajo. So that's a very good, she added one whole big dimension to this whole definition of what is restraining the mind. Okay, now, lunchtime.
What's on your mind?
So, yeah. So we'll stop with Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.